All right. You guys came in nice.
No. I had a jacket on. That's what I'm not I went to see it out. That's what I tell you.
Wait till these stragglers sit down. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the town of New Shoreham Town Council hybrid meeting for Tuesday, March 22nd, and a budget work session. The New Shoreham Town Council is hosting a hybrid meeting in person via Zoom telecommunications pursuant to State of Rhode Island Executive Order 2022-20 dated February 18th, 2022. And to see the supporting documents for this agenda, they're on Clerkbase, New Shoreham, Rhode Island, and to watch on YouTube, you can also go to youtube.com, the New Shoreham channel. As you'll notice, there's a large table in front of us tonight. We put that there for the groups to be able to sit at, have a conversation with the council at this meeting. We're not going to take any public comment because we want to have just a conversation with the groups that are presenting to us, but there'll be ample time for public comment at the Wednesday, March 22nd meeting at the public hearing and the April 6th budget public hearing. So that
28th. Today's the 22nd.
April 6th.
No, March 28th.
This Monday.
It's 28th.
Oh, I got the wrong thing here. All right, 28th. You got the right one?
No, the March 30th is the public hearing. And then April 6th.
March 30th and April 6th.
What's April 28th?
We don't have to worry about April 28th.
The 28th is the meeting that was moved
That was
from
moved forward.
the Wednesday night, and that's on the 28th. The public hearing is scheduled on March 30th, and there's two public hearings
April 6th.
required by charter. March 30th is one at 7 p.m. The second one is April 6th, also at 7 p.m.
So we'll ask that when your group is called on to present, you come up to the table and have a conversation with us. That being said, item number 1 is discuss and act on a town of New Shoreham fiscal year 2023 budgets to include community support items, Block Island Health Services, Library, Block Island Volunteer Fire and Rescue, Block Island Early Learning Center, Senior Advisory Committee, NAMI BI, Tri-County Action, Visitor Center, Coast Guard Facility, and Block Island School. That I'll give the table over to Mary Ann and Amy.
Sure. Before we get into sort of the details of the evening, I did want to take just a brief moment to talk about some of the layout changes that are incorporated into the presentation this year. There are 3 of them that I want to call your attention to. that's okay. And we can see examples of all three on page 8, administration, if you want to look over there. And that's page 8 of the budget with the numbers in it. The first is to start aggregating some of those line items by their function. So the entire administration department is still there. It is still a department with a bottom line item. But we've grouped them in ways that might help users understand the functions of each department a little bit better. So you have town council, town manager grouped together at the top. The legal lines are called out so that they're more easily found. The town clerk functions of the administration, and then some of the other general administration lines. And you'll see a similar approach in things like other town fees and income, where Harper's fees are aggregated, recreation fees are aggregated. Again, just moving things around the page in a way that hopefully makes them more intuitive. The second change is really specific to this year, and that's moving some line items out of one department and into another, again, where they might fit a little bit better in terms of their function. So an example here would be line 5405, the third one down, consultant engineer. And that's going to be general engineering services, mostly by Jim Jeremiah. And you can see there's no budget allocated for fiscal year 23. It's not because we won't be using those services, but we've moved the entire line over to the Public Works Department, which is on page 12. So you'll see the 6th line down there, consultant engineer, with the budget carrying forward for fiscal year 23 of $30,000. So in a few other places, you'll see line items that are moved from department to department. In the next iteration of this document, I will actually star those so that you know which ones have moved. I apologize, I didn't get into this version.
One quick question, Amy. Is it possible when you do move 5405 to Public Works, can you give the history, even if it's shaded and it's not added in, or I want to change your summaries, but it's tough to see the 30 and no reference.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the third change, a lot of people have noticed already, which is a roll-up of those wage lines. Historically, we've had some that are representing individual positions, some that are aggregates of several positions. And in this case, we've rolled up those wages to be either year-round or seasonal. So under administration, as an example, you have a wage line under town council, town manager, that's going to represent both the council and the manager. Under town clerk, you have a wage line that's going to represent the town clerk, Melanie McGinnis, and all of the clerks in the clerk's office. So rolling those up is a change that's new in the presentation this year.
So to pick up where Amy left off and echo some of the changes that we made in the budget, one of the things Amy did not mention that I bring to the council attention based on the conversation we had last year was request. What we've included in all the budgets this year is the department request. So you'll be able to see what the department request and what was finally, or what is the recommended budget, town manager's recommended budget to the council. Also, to just pick up where Amy left off as relates to the salaries, we did choose to roll up the salaries this year with permanent full-time employees, permanent employees. There's some that are part-time included in that. And then we kept the seasonal employees separate. What you're seeing with this budget and this layout of this budget will evolve because we already, like Amy has said, have come up with some other ideas that we'll be doing going forward into next year. One of the things we'll be looking to do that we did not do this year, but as you start working on the budget, some of these things come forward, is put the FTEs. So where you have a wage line of your permanent employees, we'll start putting the FTEs so you can see the number of FTEs in the budget. Some of the logic as relates to the layout and the reclassification of some of the items that Amy just mentioned to you is more along the line as I see the town's organization chart finally coming to fruition. As I've said to the council before, one of the first things I asked when I did come on board my first week is I asked for an org chart. And Amy advised me at that point, we didn't have an org chart. And hopefully this budget will start the beginning of how you can start seeing the organization form. And also some of the charter changes that we've made also dovetails in some of the changes you've seen in the budget. For instance, the building facilities director is a report to the public works director. So that has been moved under public works. So you're going to start seeing some of that stuff eventually appear in the budget, and hopefully the first opportunity in this, presenting this budget like this year, if the council or anyone else has any other things that they'd like to see start moving on or changes, we'll be happy to do that. And some of the work sessions and things like that, I have some ideas about that, but I'm going to leave that until the end of the budget cycle. Let's get through the complete budget cycle, and then we can have that dialogue. One other thing I would like to bring to the council attention that we just found out about just in the recent week or so is we have received our final rates for both health insurance and dental. And they are significant, what I would call significantly lower than what we had thought they would be. Although we did budget relatively low, they've come in as decrease. It represents about a $53,000 savings to the town that is not included in this budget. I would like to, with those savings, what I would like to do is revisit 3 positions in particular that were not included in the budget for this year that we talked in my budget memo to the council last week, that there are 3 positions that weren't budgeted that would be deferred until next year. One is the human service director. The other one is the human resource, and the third one is the part-time library. Amy and I have worked on the numbers that those positions originally were slated to be as recommended budget to be filled sometime in January of next year. We would like to budget these positions back in the budget, and Amy and I will work on as to when we'll hire those positions. It will be after January. It will be January or in April. Human service position, a director's position, I see that as a position that will work with a whole population ranging from the age of 0 to 105. I see the senior services with Gloria still spearheading that area as her director, as she has been, but it'll be under the Human Service Department. Also, what I see falling under the Human Service Department that is currently in the budget under community support is the Tri-County Community Action. I see that also falling under that budget. I see this department with this director working very closely with a number of organizations within our community. I see it working closely with our school. I see it working closely with our medical center. I see it working very closely with our senior population, Gloria, and all the senior advisory group. I see it working very closely with our faith-based organizations that we have here on the island and a number of other things. And that department will now start addressing some of the social, economic, mental health issues. ANAMI is another one that I see working very closely. And it'll finally have a home for those areas for our town. So I just want to lay that out there that we do have a savings, and as we get more into the department budget, I will remind the council of those 3 particular items that we would like to see budgeted.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. Council good right now?
Just if I can, the one priority for me in that social service position is probably the number 1 in my as you prioritize and start thinking about timing. I think all of them are important. I think it's great that we can fund some of them. We'll, at the end of this process, we'll look at all the pluses and minuses, but that is one area that's really important.
I'm sorry. I agree with Sven and Mary Ann. You and I have probably talked more about a human services department than anything else in the last year. I think it's, when you look at the demographics of the town, when you look at the extraordinary efforts of volunteers sort of all over the place, the idea of having a person here who's the primary human services person for the whole range of needs is it really makes a lot of sense. And I think over time it'll be viewed as a wise investment, particularly given that it probably will enable us to get some things grant funded because we have a formal structure. There is a lot of money available for various human services, but when we have disparate, often volunteer organizations, it's really tough to have the infrastructure to handle and manage grants. So thank you for thinking of that. And I agree with Sven, that's the priority for me.
So would you like to start, just go down the line, as you see then here? The medical.
Health services, yeah. Thank you.
While they're making their way up, you can find the health services budget on page 19 of the budget document or page 9 of the narrative, if you prefer to follow that document.
Thank you, Tom and Allison. Good evening.
Just to start with a summary of our proposal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, if you could use the mic, that would be great.
Sure, no problem at all. I think the 2022 budget submission to the council, Allison and our team had put this synopsis together, which I think is pretty wonderful and graphically lays out some of the changes that we have certainly experienced. I think in the patient visits, you've seen that on the side of the chronic disease management and elective primary care, we've really, and elective preventative care is really has gone up from that 2923 in 2021 up to almost 5,200 patients. And our same day medical needs that are in excess of our capacity within our schedule is labeled urgent care. You can see that we continue to have that demand surge in those months of May through October. And that's been fairly consistent overall. And trauma and rescue continues to be a service that the medical center is a partner in. And you can see those numbers for that high months of May 2021 and the 2021 totals. We have breakdowns of we often get asked questions about where individuals come for same day services. And you can see that 150 out of the total that we had came from our zip code. The vast majority come from outside of our zip code, which is consistent or just validates what we knew to be true, but it's nice to see the data presented that way. We made an earlier presentation to town council about some of the non-business models that medical payment structures go with adjustments that you owe the insurance companies in order to accept their patients, as well as some of the financial ability for individuals to pay on their particular either deductibles or copays. And that's represented by the financial impact paper. And on 2022 proposed budget, you can see that if we're successful with the town and one of our asks this year, you'll see the percentages of breakdown for the revenue for the medical center, patient revenue, fundraising, as well as town support. And I think our goals, again, we've discussed in some previous presentations, but it's to continue to grow the preventative, elective, primary care, as well as chronic disease management, allow people to age in place. That's been an overarching theme for us. So to provide more and more primary care that allows people to be here safely, have their cardiac, pulmonary disease treated here, and branch out and allow for things such as better hospice communication, which has been really a nice collaborative with Hope Hospice. As you know, South County Hospital's really stepped up for our community, has a full-time visiting nurse, Sarah Mott, who's also getting trained in wound care, which will also bring another added feature to the island community, which will be wonderful. And we continue to try to make those type of inroads. We have been accepted into Integra, Rhode Island's only accountable care organization that will allow for us both a off-site infrastructure to assist us with quality gap closure. How many people need cancer screenings? How many people need particular vaccinations? How many people need better blood pressure control, et cetera, that then we can proactively target members of the community. And that's part of a quadruple aim for the United States, which is to provide better overall healthcare at lower costs, but not in a way that HMOs did years ago by rationing care, but by being proactive now so the expenses are foregone in the future. And those are some of the structures that we're focusing on in 2022. And welcome any questions.
Are you going to go through at least some of the budget items and, benchmarks to last year, or?
We're happy to answer any questions you may have, or that might be more helpful, or do you want us to go line by line?
Maybe you can just sort of talk about big groups and where there are the pluses and minuses, because then if people have questions, or I've got a couple specific ones, but I'm not sure about everybody else.
Why don't you start and we'll pivot from there?
So I guess one question is bad debt, and it's increasing significantly, or looks like it's increasing significantly. Help me with that, other than no one likes bad debt.
Sure. So bad debt represents claims that are written off when a patient has made no attempt at all to pay their bill. And some of this in our budget is just an allowance that we have to prepare for in 2022. So a lot of that represents just the worst case scenario to make sure that we're prepared. And we always want that number to be lower than what we budget for.
And I think what you're seeing here is, I think Allison and her team putting a lot more rigor into the budget than we've had in past, where we are budgeting our bad debt, kind of understand where it is in the budget, trying to understand what processes. We also submitted to the town council a 2-page collections process that we have. So we just want to have a much clearer picture of all of our finances, where they come in, where they go out, so we can try as any organization to understand where we can make adjustments and where we can improve.
Okay, as Amy knows well, at times when we talk about bad debt and tax collection and everything, it drives me nuts. It's just in a line that I don't like a lot. And it looks like this one's increased by 45% in a year and a half. And
that's an algorithm that our finance director does. So she's basing that on projected revenues and projected patient numbers and allowances that she has to make. And if we have a new finance director, so they do different calculations.
A great one.
Yeah.
Okay. Depreciation, sorry to be nitty here for a minute, but it helps me understand. Are you guys accrual based, cash based?
Or accrual based? Yeah, my mistake, we're accrual based, I think, and I think our depreciation, I can get back to you on specific, is based on the donations that we get and the capital budget outlays that we make for mechanicals at the medical center. So for the virtual auction, we purchase items. I believe that's where the majority of our depreciation comes from, but we can get some specifics if you have questions.
Well, just from an accrual base and depreciate, just making sure it all ties how I understand the process. Other than that, I guess my big question, only because it was raised last month or whenever it was that we met, and you've talked a lot about primary care, you've talked a lot about sort of the strategy. I assume, only because there are many people here in the audience, urgent care is still a critical deliverable if somebody's hurt in the middle of the night kind of thing. And
Yeah,
I just want to.
I think what I'm going to start doing is changing the, I'm
Thank
using
you.
different words. The words were internal designations that we used that wasn't really meant for a wider audience. So it's going to be chronic disease management. Think of that as being primary care, and urgent care is going to be those same day visits that outstrip our capacity on our current schedule.
Right, versus the 2 o'clock in the morning or the 10 o'clock. I mean, there may be some of those. I mean, if
We
there,
will continue to provide urgent care as the island has come accustomed to.
thank you for that. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I don't have a question as much as a comment, Doctor. I heard you loud and clear, and I hope everybody else did when you and Allison were here last. You, in your very professional and diplomatic way, pretty much the takeaway I had from that presentation was it's our job to try to cut down in any way, shape, or form from what you would call unnecessary visits up to that medical center. And I think we're committed to do that in several ways. But I heard you loud and clear.
Yeah, appreciate that. And I think that's just from twofold for us. One is just from a public health standpoint. Secondly, I wanted to make sure that the general public didn't understand that it doesn't fit normal business models. Some people might say more business means great, more revenue, but not necessarily in the way that it works with medical billing. and the cost of, just provider staff burnout.
Well, I had two questions. The first one was, can we use a word other than urgent? But the second was, if it's not inappropriate, Allison, because you and I met with Mary Ann about this, could you talk a little bit about the community health worker program you're thinking about, or is it premature to do that?
Yeah, I don't want to go into too many details because it is premature, but I think it ties really nicely with what sounds like our mutual goals with the town, to really build up the human services department and make it something that really meets all the different needs of our community. So I think we really look forward to an approach where we're working as partners with towns and other stakeholders to really understand where the care gaps are, how we meet them. And we're very interested in the overlap between a progressive primary care and meeting those needs that are more maybe considered to be social needs or human services needs.
And I would let the council appreciate that this is a much more national effort, really. And where I came from at UNC Chapel Hill, we had built this program. The idea behind it is, as we move towards quality care in the United States, moving away from fee for service, more for paid for performance, it's essential to have somebody that can get out in the community, follow up on wound issues, follow up on a recent fall, follow up on all these particular items that don't necessarily generate revenue for a business, but is essential to keep them out of the hospital. And I think that fits well with our aging in place concept, to get somebody out in the community that specifically can dovetail between, I think, the town's visions of human services as well as things that we need on the medical side.
Okay. Anybody else? So just two last questions. I didn't bring them up because I thought they were going to be brought up. Allison, can you just help me a little bit with the, I will say, jump in revenue, patient fees? And the patient fees are going up roughly 588 to 643. So that's a good 10%. And then a little bit, only because it would probably just help everybody. Wages also went up a fair amount. And if you could help with those two line items, just so everybody understands them better as we get into this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, so patient revenue went up because we're doing a better job of collecting money. And we anticipate that will continue to be the case in 2022. And we're committed to doing everything we possibly can in the healthcare model, which always works against us, as you've heard us talk about a lot. But we're committed to really maximizing our ability and our responsibility when it comes to being sustainable as an organization. And that's how we do it. We collect patient revenue and patient fees. The second point, probably the biggest increase in the wage category, is adding a second medical assistant. This also really aligns with our goals of increasing the attention we're paying to quality care and covering quality care gaps. So yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, why do you have so many people that work at the medical center? And the truth is because medicine has changed, right? Our electronic health record alerts us to all kinds of things that we would never have been aware of before 2018, which is when we got Athena Health. So now it becomes our responsibility as primary care providers, but also just good providers of medicine, to be able to have the appropriate staff to look into all those details, to connect those back of the house things. For example, if you come in for your physical, it's our responsibility to make sure we have a copy of various tests that you've had, from other facilities. So that's probably the biggest increase you're seeing there.
Yeah, and if I can put an example for you on the net patient fees, as we have patients aging in place on the island, something that wasn't done, but is something that's really urged in primary care, is that for all the home health orders, all the hospice orders that get done, previously they weren't being billed. We were signing them off, and this is a ubiquitous problem in primary care throughout the country. But the idea is that if we have more people in aging and receiving those types of services, when we receive the orders and the oversight, we have the ability to directly query Medicare for funds for those services. So there's an area where we're getting better patient fees, but with no net discernible change to a patient. We're just now billing for things that we hadn't been billing before, which we ought to be billing for in a more progressive primary care state. And the idea of we are now, as I mentioned, we're part of the ACO. So therefore, as we do collectively better with quality gaps, we will receive operational revenue for that. That is part of our pledge to the community to be as financially sustainable for ourselves. And that's an area that we're really excited about.
Thank you.
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you very much. I think you've clarified some issues I found out, as I said at the last meeting when you were here. I think many of us are looking at this from a very different lenses, a multitude of them, because I've always been on Block Island, and my view of what the world provides is very different from, well, Keith's the best example, and in descending to how long people have been here. And people who come in from the mainland yesterday have a widely different view than I. And I'm really appreciate the time that you're taking to explain this and try to make it clear. I would second what Keith said. Let's get the word urgent out of this. That caused a lot of, I think, unnecessary confusion and stress. And we have to better quantify what we're saying in terms that aren't just universal national terms, but words for it. We are still a small town. And so I think this has been very helpful for us to understand things. Thank you.
Sure. And we have a first of our fireside chats tomorrow at the library, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, no fire, it's a little warm.
And, but the idea behind it is to sit and talk with the community, explain different things. I think people often will want to ask, what does that mean for me? And I think that's, again, that presentation wasn't made for a very large audience. It was built for a very particular group like tourism and the chamber. But we are very aware now that we have to be very specific about our words.
Words matter.
You good? Thank you, guys. Oh, I will also note that we have 2 letters that arrived today. One from Marie Langdon and one from Keith and Kay Lewis in support of the budget for the medical center.
Thank you.
Next item is the library. Library.
Page number.
Page number 16. Just trying to help.
Wow. Class.
Guys want to
Hi.
Hi. You want to start?
Sure.
Good.
I want to start by, I think I have to start with a big thank you for, well, we don't know yet, but thanks for the thoughts and for putting that forward. I know, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, legs crossed.
Wow, that's great. For everybody behind me who may not have heard that, that was for a teen services expansion position at the library. I have to say that when we had our budget meeting, the town manager, Marianne, asked me, well, do you think you need that? And it was a good question, right? Like, do we need that? And in my gut, I wanted to say, yeah, we need that. And it's true, we need that. So I'm hopeful for that position, and that's very exciting for us. I brought something to talk about that position, so I'll just share it. Just real quickly, we were picked to be part of a national study about teen services. And so, you know, and it's a 3-year study. So funding that position, that would be really valuable to us to have someone in the position of teen services while this study was going on. And this is the national survey. The national study here is transforming and scaling teen services for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so it's about teen services, evaluating the teen services and demonstrating the value of interest-driven learning for the teen services. So very exciting to even have that back on the table. So thank you. The other, and just for a little bit more about that position, if we could just lobby for it for another second, if I may. We asked for it years, we asked for an expansion position years ago. So when it gets deferred, it's been deferred. So, the time is now. For real, like it's been deferred. It got deferred through COVID. And for me to probably even get it on the budget that was pre-COVID, I probably had to talk about it for a couple of years. So, we've been working on it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So, it is the time now to do that position. I wanted to say the other thing that was on our budget that didn't get fully the request, and I think you have my full request, right? Like, I know Amy said last week she was going to send over the packets. So we did ask for a maintenance worker. And we asked that in the spirit of demonstrating what we think that, potentially the town needs too, right? So it doesn't have to be a library maintenance worker, although we could do that, but it could be a town maintenance worker that the library gets designated, allocated hours for. So, we like to keep that conversation going with you during the budget season. We can all agree about maintenance and what's happening currently with the town, what's happened in the past, and where we see that going. And I'm sure that's on everybody's list, remains on everybody's list. I know that's on the town manager's list. I know it's on yours. So just to also say, yep, it's still on our list as well, right? We still need that person who comes in and does skilled laboring. When I think about that position, it's really like anything with a power tool, I'm not doing, right? I'm not doing that. It's not what my skill set is. It's probably best for safety that I don't do it. And it really needs to be done right. And the building needs to be taken care of. So that's a little bit of, I can call the people to do it, but really we need a maintenance worker to help us with that. So that was in our budget request. And then the last thing that wasn't filled was the couple $1,000s. I think we asked for $3,000 more in books. And I did want to talk about that for a minute tonight. And I think I have a note about it. So, the books, I spent a little time on this today. So on the budget proposal, you'll see that we asked for an increase because there's an uptick in e-resources, electronic book use, and that cost is now coming to the individual libraries from the Library Consortium. It used to be that after I bought books somewhere in May or June, I'd have a little bit of book budget left, and I would send the Library Consortium a donation towards ebooks. Now that's a requirement from each individual library in the consortium, and our cost yearly is $3,000. So when we don't get an increase in the book line, it's coming out of physical books because we do have to pay for the electronic books now. It's an increase. And then I also looked up publishing costs, and I couldn't find everybody's increase, but I found a few publishing houses who are talking about a 6% increase in publishing costs. Their concerns are paper, packaging, labor, safety during the pandemic, additional resources, time and investments, manufacturing and distribution during the pandemic. So at a 6% increase, it's about, and again, this, I'm the librarian, not the math teacher, but it's about 150 books that I wouldn't be able to buy this year. Both of those together, the increase in the cost for ebooks as well as the publishing increase would be about 150 physical books. And it's really what we do, right? We still buy print copy. My patrons behind me, my patrons who are not in this room, they enjoy a print copy. We think it's important to have print copies in the building. And so I wanted to talk about that and answer any questions about that. But I will say, as much as I talk about print copies, the other piece here about the ebooks, the reason we fund that is because we had 2,092 ebook audio checkouts and 2,472 ebook book checkouts. That's pretty big for us. Those numbers surprised me. I wouldn't think that we had almost 5,000 checkouts of electronic materials in this town. So those are numbers specific to our library patrons, and those are high numbers. You use it all the time. There you go. Yeah. It is interesting, though. I've been working in the collection a lot this winter, and I was working in the audiobook section, and I'm really, nobody has these in their there are no players in cars. There are no players in homes, right? Like it's really an antiquated thing. I held on to some of them. Nobody needs to panic, but I got rid of a chunk.
Can you help me, or, okay, do you mind? Help me a little bit with that transition, because that's something that was predicted about 10 years ago, and everybody thought, paper and print was going to be a disaster. I'm actually shocked you're going to say it's 6%, because some of the print work I've done recently has been a lot higher than that. So on the print side, publishers are struggling. What's the transition, and what's your feeling by age and age group? If you could just help us, because I get what you're saying about ebooks, trying to understand the transition.
Yeah. So it's funny because I think of you often. So years ago, Sven on the large asset committee came into the library and he said, so what do you think we should do with this space when we don't have books? Do you remember saying that to me? And I was like, I'm the librarian. We're going to have books for a while. But I think of that often, right? I'm always making space. I'm always like we have no more CDs in the building anymore, right? Like, so those are the transitions. Shortly, this town will have high-speed fiber networks to homes, right? Fingers crossed. I don't know how long I'll hold on to DVDs at that point, right? Like, so those are the things that we look at. So ebooks are a transition there. I think print copy is alive and well. I don't think it's changing as quickly as those other, as those two items that I just mentioned. I don't know about age. It surprises me. I don't read an ebook. I think though it's across the board. I do. I think for us in our community, we're a group of travelers, right? I think we have a community that spends some time off of island and they don't want to pack 5 books, right? We have readers in this town. We know that from the checkouts. We know that from the work that we do. I don't think people like to pack 5, 6, 7, 8 hard copy books. I know I always hear stories about people having to leave their books at the counter because their bags weigh too much, right? Like, everybody laughs at those stories. We're still going to have those books for a while, but I can't really give you that. I don't know those figures that way, but we could dig into that a little.
And it's a little bit around budget, especially for next year. But if you said there was roughly 5,000 checkouts, conceptually, how many book checkouts are there? Ballpark.
I hope you have that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to say it out loud?
Yeah.
Let's see. How many checkout print material? Print checkouts 8,400. It's that gap. Yeah. And so when we look at these numbers statewide at statewide library meetings, we definitely know some of this is reflected in COVID. Right. So we are watching this number as a consortium. We are looking at this, right? The consortium is wondering the same questions we're asking tonight. How many more ebooks are we buying for next year? Who are we getting contracts with? How many copies of ebooks do we need, right? Because you can't always get what you want, right? You can't always get that. So how do we go into contracts about that? Not all work that I do, but I do listen at statewide meetings. Yeah. So 8,400. And again, you can also see the AV going down, right? That's 3,800. And we know that that's already, even without fiber to the homes, that's still Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, whatever everybody is subscribing to. So that again is the DVD demand shrinking. Except you, right? And so, right, so that's a, you know, Martha, that's a great point, right? Like there will always be people, even when we have fiber, that don't want it, can't afford it, aren't interested in it, don't want it in their home, right? There'll always be some gap that we fill there for, as libraries, the great equalizers, right?
I'll put this under no dumb question, I hope. Go back to maintenance. You said that it was shortened in some way, shape, or form. But as I read this, I see 3 lines under maintenance, and all of them are either level funded or increased. Am I
Right.
missing them?
Right, so maintenance was about an additional line item for a maintenance worker.
Additional.
An additional maintenance worker, right? So currently, and for many years, the library trustees, and there's many next to me, and there's another in this room. And I think that could be a lot of you. Wow, it's awesome to have that support in the room. So for many years, the library trustees, they, from their accounts where they receive donations, they write for a few grants every year. They receive a little bit of income from some state, you know, some accounts that they have. They pay out of their accounts for a library maintenance worker. That person, as I said, does power tool things, cuts down, trims the trees so they're not rubbing against the building, cleans the gutters, will paint something, will move TVs around for me as I, you know, as we use rooms differently and look at how our space is used and make room for other things. And again, I thought that was in your packet. I think I gave mine to someone recently. Do you not have that?
No.
The maintenance
That's okay.
worker job description? I'll make sure you get it because it does describe, you know, what I can just remember off the top of my head, but in detail. So we have this maintenance worker. And so the big question becomes, how do we want to continue funding this? What's a better long-term plan than the trustees paying this, right? Like, should this position, your decisions here, should this positions be a town position? Should it continue to have the library trustees pay it? Should it be a bigger town position that we allocate a few hours out of each week? Those kinds of thoughts. Is that right?
Yeah, good discussion. Down the road.
Yeah. So again, right, good discussion. So our intention this year with, I'm sorry you don't have it.
That's okay.
Um,
That describes it.
Yeah, so it is discussion, right? Like, what are we going to do about this? And what we're advocating for this year is just for you to understand, we need that person about 5 hours a week. That's what's important, I think, for this year, that the trustees will continue to pay that because we need it. We need that person 5 hours a week. We need the gutters cleaned. I'll give you another example. We had to dig trenches, right? Something got wonky with the drainage. And the water was coming in the building. I had to call someone quickly. And I called the maintenance worker and he dug the trenches and we stopped the flood into the basement. So there's always work like that. Door handles don't work, locks don't work. I just asked them tonight. I said, I'm on my way out of town and I come back. I said, I want to fill the gas heaters that were part of the grant last year. I want to get the gas in them. I want to do some outdoor programming in the spring. I want to make sure we can get the community together soon. You know, again, not my skill set to fill the gas tank and get it hooked up to a gas heater, not something I'm comfortable with. So, you know, those kinds of jobs. When I spoke to Marianne and Amy about this in our budget hearing, you know, I sort of said, like, you know, we could all say in the old days, right? So in the old days, I would go down to the road crew and track them down and say, hey, who's got time today, right? It's not how we operate anymore. We're bigger than that now. They have higher priorities. And so I'm highlighting some of our priorities.
The last thing is I got to rethink my will because I was thinking of giving you guys all my 8-track tapes.
So we
Yeah.
still use them for credit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds so good. You guys all good? Any more questions on the library budget? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
that.
it, Marianne.
Got volunteer fire and rescue. Up next. Whenever you guys are ready, just. Whenever you guys are ready, just.
So we received a budget like everybody else probably last week, I'm not sure what day, but on the operating budget.
Oh, you want to
Oh,
get,
sorry.
The operating budget, we had noticed that there was a $50,000 pulled out of it. So trying to figure out where I'm supposed to pull that $50,000 from when this is pretty much laid out what it costs us. Doesn't really, it costs us a lot more than this, but this is the town's portion and we feel as though it's fair that the town
right.
picks up. So you'll notice that, like we're talking about, there's a $50,000 jump this year. And a lot of that has to do with a new EMT class. And then in the fall, we have an ALS class, cardiac class coming up.
Amy, we're doing page 10 of page 19, the base.
We're on page 19. This is community support for Block Island Volunteer Fire and Rescue
Thank you.
with the recommended funding level $230,000.
Hang on.
You okay?
No, but that's fine.
Okay. And in reality, the total budget, and Kirk can explain this, should have been 309,900. And that has to do with different entities. The radios that we use at the school, the highways department, police department, I think there's 7 different entities that use this radio program, the radios that we have. And we pick up the burden of expenses on that. So there was a breakdown there, and Kirk can explain that a little better. We tried to break that down, so like highways department picked up their part, the police department picked up their part, power company picked up their piece. Repeat myself, I think I said the school, so. Water company. Yeah, water company, sewer water. So Kirk can explain that a little bit, he understands it a little thoroughly on that.
So our budget on that was $25,000. Then you add, if it was broke out to each department, $2,200. If we pick up the whole thing for everybody in the town, it's you add 17,600 to the 25. For a total line item for that was 42,600, which takes our budget up to $309,900. Everybody was getting confused looking at the totals, and they were all going with the $292,300, where it should have been $309,900. Does that explain it? There's eight departments that you break that out into. We pick up the emergency management, which there's only one radio. Then you have everyone else that uses all the maintenance fees for the radios, and each radio there's only so many radios. You have to keep buying licenses, and Hal has to keep buying licenses because we keep adding radios to it.
Yeah. 17,600 of expenses is what the fire department is currently paying for radios and for this communication system for the whole town. Okay, that includes things like biannual PM maintenance, about $2,800. So that should technically, that should be, that probably should be an IT for the town. They should maintain all this, not us.
So can I, is it okay if I ask a question?
And what, just one thing, and what Kirk is saying and Chris is saying is that our budget as submitted, the 290 some odd thousand number, didn't include this. This was put in a little footnote on the side. So if you increased it by 17, if we're gonna pay it, you increase it by 17.6. If the town's gonna pay it, then you don't have to increase it by 17.6. So that's just an understanding of what was submitted. Okay, then these expenses, you know, we could bill them out to the departments. So, I mean, I think something has to be done on these what they call head end expenses. So that's the one item.
Let me just stop you there. I wanna, Amy, do you wanna comment on that portion? Marianne? Yet, or,
No, let them keep going.
okay,
But the thing would be helpful is to have a sense when we look at the document that the Fire and Rescue gave us, and we look at the gross level number that is in the budget that we have, sort of what your thinking was, for example, is the, you know, when you arrived at your budget number, did you base it off of this and take a haircut, or were there matters in here that were paid for elsewhere in the town, or are there matters that you thought could be deferred till next year? You know what I mean? Like, what was the thinking that goes, you know, because we're not doing apples to apples. We have two bottom lines and only one detailed analysis.
I think, and correct me if I'm reading this wrong, but I have requested 285 on the budget, and I have recommended 230. Okay, so on their ask, I have 292 or 309. So I know this is probably simple.
Sure.
For you.
There's a second line in the town's operating budget just below, which is the fire alarm fees. That's
Okay.
7,000. We historically track those separately. So if you take the 285.3 plus the 7, you're at the 292.3.
Okay.
Total recommended is 237. I think we'll probably talk in more detail about the radio system by itself, but certainly in my mind, the evolution of those discussions is still ongoing. And that's why, at least from my perspective, those numbers are carved out a little separately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification with the line item right underneath it. I didn't look underneath it. Continue, you guys. Thank you.
Let me just give a little recap that hopefully we could understand and not get too technical or too much into numbers. Of all the budget processes and all the people that get budgets, whether they be town departments or community service, whatever, we're one of the few that do our own fundraising. And it's because of that fundraising that we're able to buy a lot of equipment that takes the burden off the town. If you take our expenses for the last 4 years, and I'm not talking major purchases right now, just talking expenses, and I'll try to keep it simple, and then I'll open up to any questions you have. In 2018, the town's budget to us was $135,000. Our expenses were $509,000, which included a major expense that we got some funding for, was the Stryker ambulance stretcher and the load system in the ambulance. So if you back that out, our expenses were 365,000 for 18. For 19, they were 337,000. For 20, they were 346,000. And for 21, they were 360,000. So you're kind of averaging around a 350 odd thousand number to run it. Based on the town support in 18, we got 135,000. So the town paid for 26.5% of the expenses. In 19, we got 180,400. The town paid for 53.5% of the expenses. In 20, we had 180,000 level funded in 20. And the town paid for 52,000 of those expenses. 52%, I'm sorry, 52%. And in 21, we got a 208,900 budget, and that amounted to 58% of the operating budget. So without our outside people, it would cost the town roughly 360,000 a year to operate as we currently operate. So I just put that out to you to try to get the thing in a simple fashion so we could all understand it. We also have turned over to the town the infamous refit of an engine, which initially was on the capital budget to rebuild. We paid for that, never got included in the funding plan that was supposed to be. So that was 145,000, not counting all the tools and the hoses that we bought. And we paid $40,000 on top of a grant that we were able to secure from the RUSA fund to purchase 2 new ambulances. Our ambulances are in terrible shape, just so you know, and we can go into details on anything you want. But we've given back to town $185,000, and we only got from town 208. So where is the money coming from? It's our ability to try to raise funds. And our ability is dropping off. And when COVID hit, there were people that were very generous to us during the COVID period. We got some big funds in. But we already are looking at, for 21 versus 20, a drop of about $95,000 in revenues. And it will continue. As taxes go up, people say, well, I'm paying for it anyway, so, you know, I don't need to donate. But we get a lot of our funding from either private family trusts, or we get our funding from people that have need of a rescue call, or they have need, or there's a fire, or you turn out for an alarm. And, you know, people pass away, i.e. the recent people that died in the town. We will get checks in memory of those people. And that's a lot of our funding comes from there. I want you to understand where the funding comes from. And if it's not there, unfortunately, we're looking at an annual operating expense. And that's assuming we're not in the future paying for anybody to do any work, because it's basically volunteers. I think from planning down the road, there has to be a lot of thought into how you're going to finance this operation in the future. Okay, so I will turn it over. Chief, you want to
So I guess my biggest question with this $50,000 deduction, where am I supposed to take this from? Am I supposed to take it from all this NFPA equipment testing that we have to have every year, hose, ladders, ground ladders, pumps, etc. Maintenance on the vehicles, make sure they're up and running. Right down the line. I just don't know. I mean, and then you get into, your firefighter, the training. So if I had to pick the two there, we got to make sure the equipment's up and running and safe. So it leaves me with backing out training. I don't see any other way on that.
I have one, couple questions. One is, first of all, on the training, I think sort of as a community, the training you guys do with the kids, I think is immensely valuable beyond sort of firefighting. I think it provides a really worthwhile sort of passion and activity for a lot of, I love driving by there early in the morning and seeing those kids out training. It's terrific. One of the questions I had is, maybe because I have a daughter who's an EMT, but and know a lot of the people in the current training class. Will the EMT training do anything to potentially reduce the number of, is that summer EMT number the professionals who are coming out during COVID, or is that that's when Claire's at the barn? Gotcha.
Yeah, that's
okay.
our crew,
Gotcha.
our summer
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah.
Standby crew.
Right.
Yeah. As far as that training, I appreciate you noticing that. And we have like 4 or 5 juniors right now that are juniors. And then we put 4 people through the Rhode Island Fire Academy. So we have, and then we have a firefighter 1 class going on now, and then a firefighter 2 class starting up this weekend. So we're constantly trying to build and train these guys. They got to be trained. They got to be safe. They got to know how to do the job, and they're volunteering for probably one of the most dangerous jobs there is. So we got to take care of that, and there's just no way around that. So, and then again, in our EMTs, new EMTs, we're always running short on EMTs, and we have 14 in a class right now that are going through that. And then this September, we have a cardiac class. I'm not sure how many have signed up for that. They have a fair amount, and that should be able to bring us up to an ALS status, advanced life support. So they'll be able to start lines, IVs, et cetera. So if you have a nasty situation there, they can get those going. If the doctor needs to show up and get medications going, they're ready to go. And I think it would help the doctor also and take a little pressure off him. The person's that much further ahead when he gets up there or she gets there.
And the training, the firefighter 1 and the training with the firefighter 1 and 2, really, it should reflect by the ISO and the insurance rates, the fire insurance rates for the town. It should lower them. The more we have firefighter 1, firefighter 2, the more the EMTs have additional training, it should lower our rates for all taxpayers, not just the town.
I understand the fire training. Just re-educate me on the EMT research and training. Aren't they done roughly every 3 years? So next year, there will not be a research. Next year, there will not be a whole new class, yet it's in the budget. Is that to take care of this the money's to take care of this last class?
Yes, it's to take care of less, plus it's an average. Because we have Target Solutions that we pay for, which is online training, and we pay for that every year. That's $2,800 just for Target Solutions. It's based on the number of people times the rate. There's the annual interface license that you have to have with that. That's $400 for that interface. So we go through different phases within the training. It's all classified on the training, but we have ongoing use of the computers for self-training. And then American Safety, their person, Cindy Horan, I don't know if anyone knows her, but she comes over here and does some special training on courses. So that's also included in that. Plus it's the transportation to get these people here. Plus it's the hotel rooms. So it adds up.
Thank you, Mike.
I just want to give you guys some quick numbers. So we're at last year, 589 calls, fire and rescue. So we're up 85 calls from last year. Just some information there.
Do you have a,
This falls apart when I touch it. Do you have any kind of analysis of that? That seems like an awful lot.
I just have numbers from dispatch that they gave me. A lot of them, 143 calls are box alarms. A box alarm is a commercial fire alarm that comes in, that rings into the station. So a lot of these are nuisance calls. Some of them are legit, but I'm gonna say 98% of them are kitchen setting off smokes, people upstairs taking a shower, just a lot of stupid calls. Sorry for lack of better words, you know?
No, that's an honest word. It seems as though that's an ongoing theme that people aren't getting out there, outside of the people who are listening to this meeting and are involved in your department. It just seems as if people should be able to not make that happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know,
And
1
I'm
o'clock
just-
in the
I'm
morning
fine.
after shifts are over and they're up in their room above a restaurant and they decide to smoke someone under a smoke detector or whatever, you know, it's just a lot of stupid mistakes that I think could be addressed by maybe the property owners and cut down a lot of these, but it is what it is. 19 of them are residential fire alarm calls. Those have been coming down a little bit because we have a couple of the alarm companies put a letter out to the real estate companies and the owners of the property that if your windows are open and it's foggy out, the system's gonna go off. And here's the code to reset it. And don't call the fire department to come reset it if there's a non-emergency. Call your real estate company, call your property manager. So that helped a little bit. Get down a little bit, you know, 24 related fire department calls, 911 calls. I don't have a real good breakdown. 2 MVAs, motor vehicle accidents, and then 2 med assists for rescue. So, but it keeps climbing and it will continue to keep climbing. People are very fast, as a doctor knows, to call 911 for a sprain or something that could wait. And I think there's something in line there to try to slow that down a little bit. But the numbers are what they are.
that's actually good to have that reinforced from 2 different people the same way. Everybody just should think a little bit more.
Yeah, and you know, and you have the chronic drinking and the stupid stuff that goes on during the day, and it starts around 4 in the afternoon and it starts ramping up into the evening. So that I don't have answers for. I don't get paid enough to try to figure that out.
As far as the EMT calls that we get, which is 300 and, sorry,
That's right, your
396 for the rescue section. They can vary from somebody scraped the knee to serious calls. So, but you know, when you're averaging 1.6 calls a day, it's a lot of demand.
A lot of towns
We're probably one of the few towns that don't. We have looked into this program. We're very close to doing that. Mary Ann needs to kind of work on, I guess. She wants to work with us on that to make sure it's a smooth transition. But we have support of the department and rescue. There's a few people that were a little uncomfortable with it, but majority has voted to go forward on it. And I think that could generate easy to $30,000-$40,000 a year on non-resident charging people.
Yeah, there's a couple of issues that have to be resolved before we even consider going that route. One is whether we can collect from the insurance companies. If we don't collect, what are we going to do? Number two is a public relations issue. We have to actually have many meetings on that to talk about it, because we don't want people who need medical help not to call. And I think it's a fine line. I know some departments have someone who does the billing for them. They bill the insurance companies, and after the third time that they bill, if it hasn't been paid by the insurance company or the person, they just let it drop. If we. Don't reveal that. Well, I'm telling you what other departments do. I'm not telling you what we're going to do. But that's a whole discussion and process that needs to take place. And that's something the town council should also take a look at.
I was curious at North Providence. My son works for North Providence Fire, and they said last year, whole different animal. Over $3 million billed and collected.
So if I can, I'm sorry. No, I was just trying to go to Andre. So a couple of things. One, I hear you, Mike, on it is a culture shift. I hear you on the education. This is the only community I've ever been in my life where an ambulance is free. And I understand that, but I think given our budgets, given everything else, let's hold those public hearings as soon as possible in public meetings. And I do think it's a recognition of the past, but also a little bit of the reality of today and the costs that we're incurring. So at least one member of the council would strongly support moving that forward. And that was going to be one of my questions. On the budget level overall, first of all, thanks so much for all three of you for going through it. I would love to figure out how to solve a little bit. And while we have a lot more presentations to go, some areas I see opportunities, some areas are looking for more. So I would love to help solve. My big question to you, Chris, is if you don't get 50, is there a way to do some training? And yes. I'm trusting it's not an all or none.
I would like to say that, but in reality, no, we're going to do what we got to do. And, can we take a little less of a hit? Can we work this out? Can we go back and forth? I hope so. But I'm not gonna say July 1st, we're stop training. No, I will not do that.
Thank you. And I'm hoping through this whole process, we can do a little bit of solve. I'm hoping, to be honest with you, that the ambulatory movement helps. I do think your comments about non-emergent urgent, which is sort of the painful calls, I believe the medical center has been going through the exact same issue. And I think that non-emergent emergent, we need to start educating on. To your point with the realtors, how do we educate people on the fact that, it's your neighbor who's getting up, don't be lazy. And no, we don't. Yeah. I meant the renter. So anyway, so I think that's really important, but I hope we can come up with some way to help a little bit, but it probably won't be the total.
I got you. Thank you. It's something I just want to touch on. The volunteering thing is amazing. And if you have the heart for it and the pride, you do it. But it costs so much to live out here. There's guys that are very well trained that can't afford to do it because every working hour they have to be on their job. And then after that's a family, and then there's nothing left. So we do see less and less on a weekly basis of some of these guys, but when a job comes in, they'll be there but they're not maybe as sharp as if they were there all the time. I guess that's what I'm getting at. We got a decline of members being active. And I don't have an answer for it because there's no incentive to do this job unless you're crazy and love it, you know? And like, you know, a tax break or some sort of incentive so that if anybody can think something up that would draw more people, I think would be helpful. And I don't know what that could be a conversation for another time, but.
You know, we just, yeah, it's for another time, but I think that's a big discussion to talk through.
So thanks for hearing us. Thank you for giving us the time.
Oh, I don't think Mike's done.
I'd be done if we walked out with 309,000, but that's okay. I want to thank the council. I want to thank Marion and Amy who've been working with us to try to get these numbers put together for you. And I also want to make a statement that we treat this, it's a volunteer organization. We're a 501c3. There is no member that gets any benefit from this organization. I know there are other organizations that skirt the rules a little bit and they'll pay for certain things, but I will tell you right now, there is not a member that gets any benefit from this organization. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike.
Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Chris. Really? On break?
They'll sit.
You guys, yeah, they're all leaving.
Just get in your seats slowly.
They just need a break, 2 minutes. They just need 2 minutes. They need a couple of minutes. When they return, so.
No worries.
So smile. So.
Every year is presented.
All right, we're back together here.
Okay,
Julie and Tracy are here to present for the Block Island Early Learning Center.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie and Tracy.
All right, thank you for having us.
Could we have quiet in the room? Quiet in the room.
hey, guys.
Julie speaking.
Come around.
So we are
Thank
happy
you.
to say we've asked for level funding once again. We've done it several years in a row. And I feel like the way we get there is, for one, great staff, very dedicated, and great set of parents that also we do reach out to. We reach out for things like construction things and maintenance things and things like that. That's constantly changing. So when we get a fresh set of parents in, they have different talents. We kind of look to those talents. We talk about it all the time. So that's one reason why we're able to do that. The other thing is I feel like every time a door closes for us in the last few years, another one has opened. So we have, we had a teacher that had been there for quite a while. She left and we had a younger teacher come in. So that was we had less health insurance. It was a single person. We've had, during COVID, we were very lucky. We were able to stay open the entire time during COVID. Stayed very healthy, fingers crossed. We have, Mary D is very generous with the Early Learning Center. So I feel like we've been able to shift our expenses and our income around each time we're kind of faced with a challenge so that we can come in and ask for, just what we need and not more than that. So our budget is pretty down to, brass tacks. We were able to negotiate with our landlords for utilities. Utilities was a wild card for us, a bit of a wild card. So we were able to negotiate with them. So we now have a fixed amount of utilities as far as a monthly fee, and that made a big difference. At least it was easier to budget for, and that made a big difference. And then our payroll expenses, we got a PPP loan early on in COVID. That was very helpful. It was incentivized for the teachers to stay on and come in during circumstances of COVID. That was helpful. So we've had, like I said, I feel like each time we have a stumbling block, we're able to sort of get around that. As far as going forward, we actually welcomed a student in this week. So we're up to 20 now. We've had, I would say, a little more interest in camp. I think, again, the demographics on Block Island, I think we've had a little bit of a baby boom. I think we're up to 12 babies in the last 18 months. So, and I'm hearing rumors that a lot of them may be staying. So hopefully we have places for them to live and they can stay. So that's actually very exciting news for us. As far as so another kind of thing, what we had a break on was professional development because of COVID. That used to be a rather, not a large expense, but a significant amount of money we'd have to outlay for that. And also travel and subbing and all that. That all went online thanks to the state of Rhode Island. And we have really good options online, which are free, that was like just a grace there as well through an upside of COVID. And I think that's kind of all the differences. Right now, our rates for year-round students are based on $9.50 an hour. So that's a reduced rate because we get the support from the town of New Shore. If a seasonal student came in, and we do have seasonal in both fall and in the spring, we're at $13 an hour for them. So it's a significant savings for a Block Islander to send their child to the Early Learning Center. So we'll continue that. We have a built-in 25-cent an hour raise, which has actually worked. That's about a $2,800 little bump each year. So that kind of helps with, expenses rising, cost of living kind of expenses. So I don't really know if you have any questions or.
So
Real quickly, you mentioned the camps, and unless I'm reading this wrong, it looks like the revenue from the camps is frighteningly low.
Yes, so.
I mean, like almost.
Yes,
I-
so
yeah.
camp is at a loss, so camp is clearly at a loss, but we're providing childcare through the summer months. So camp has been at a loss for several years.
Right, but is there a way to boost the?
So what we do is we send out our camp forms to our year-round students. So right now they get a head start on the rest of the community because we can only take, without hiring a whole new teacher, we have ratios we have to contend with. So for example, in the toddler room, we can have a ratio of 1 to 6. So we have 1 teacher, we get a 6 toddlers. So if we get a 7th toddler, we have to make that, do we do another do we hire another teacher for a 7th kid? If we have 2 full rooms of 6 and 6, that's great. So, and then in the other room, the preschool room, the ratio is 1 to 9, so it's a little bit higher. So we're always playing a game of balance between our ratios, hiring another person. So that other person is going to cost us, $16 to $17 an hour. The kid is only paying $9.50 an hour. So again, it's a service we're providing. We recognize that we get support from the town, and some of the people are working, and there are some of our year-round population. So that is a known thing that we're sort of operating at a loss during that time.
So I guess maybe you can help me because I got a little confused. Is it to get more students into the camp? Is it to just keep bleeding? Like what's and I understand the social service part. I
Yes,
get that.
right. So we'd be happy to get more. I mean, if we had 40 kids in the camp, we would get staff for that, and we would do that.
And do you have to be here for the whole summer to participate, or can you do this
No.
in a
Actually,
short period?
We have different programs. So the most flexible program is the summer camp. You could come 1 week of the 9 weeks if you wanted to. So if grandma, and this does happen, if grandma and grandpa are in charge of junior for 2 weeks and they want something for that kid to do, they could do 2 weeks and that would be fine. Other people, like some of our year rounders, they're going to do all 9 weeks and put the kid in for every hour that we're open. So again, we're playing with ages and things like that, but we obviously try to get them in as much as possible if they can.
This summer though already seems bigger than it's been.
It does, yeah.
So we've already been collecting stuff and we already have higher numbers than we have in the past.
And
Last year was tough because in the toddler program, we were only allowed to have 3 kids because of COVID regulations. So that definitely hurt.
And are you communicating at all with real estate agents or that kind of thing? Because I mean, these revenue numbers are so low. I just can't believe that people know it. There's something weird.
We do, well, last year I'd say was the
Their
worst.
nannies, their grandparents.
So people do different things, yeah. You wanna go ahead?
I was gonna say, it seems like, I don't know, the trend over the last, 5-10 years is people bringing out their own caregiver. They have their au pair or their nanny and they bring them with their extra 2 cars, we were talking about the busing. So that is definitely tough. But hopefully it's on the upswing. And then there weren't a lot of children.
Last year was.
Yeah. But like we said, with the baby boom, hopefully we'll get some more of the. But we've always discussed that, and obviously a town thing is, do you not run because like you say, we're at a loss, or do you provide that service because we're trying to offer a year-round thing for people who legitimately work here year-round?
Julie, you mentioned an enrollment of 20 plus or minus. Is that consistent every year?
So for the last few years, it's not consistent. For the last few years, the last 2 years, it's been around 2021, 23, upwards of 27, I think it's in, say, the last 6 years, I would say. So we only have so many kids, so we try to get them all in, but.
You have a limit? What you can take
So
realistically?
32 is our upper limit, with the way everything's laid out, the way the rooms are laid out, the way the teaching staff is and whatnot. So 32 is our limit.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to comment about what a great job you guys have consistently done year after year. My son went through that with your son, Tracy. And I just think it is that loss on the camp. That is a big help to the parents, who are the working parents of Block Island. And I'm fine with I'm fine with that model because I know those kids have a great time. They learn a lot. They meet a lot of kids, whether they're not from the island or not. They have exposure to other kids. and to get them in there and to make it affordable to the parents, which you've done all these years. I think that's great. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it. Next item is senior advisory. Gloria? I see.
She didn't tell me that she was going to be online, so we went and asked. She's not identified.
Sandy, we got a letter from Gloria today, and I just want to make sure if she's online that she has the
I
opportunity.
think Lori was planning to be online and to speak to the council.
Okay, Gloria Redlick, if you're online with us this evening, I think you probably have to press *9, or is that what you want? Is that how she gets in? Or let us know what your number is. Unmute is *6, isn't it?
Yes.
You don't know if she's there or not?
If I may, Andre.
Go ahead.
I'm really a little overwhelmed, and I would like to give a little time to the town manager. If she could repeat what she stated at the beginning of this meeting.
Yeah.
I'd love to give some of my time to listen to that again. It certainly has been a long road since 2007. Seniors are very important to me, and we have lost a lot of them in the last few years. Great part of our community, and I just want to keep things going so that the rest of us that have the gray hair can stay on this side a little more. And I think I heard everything Mary Ann had to say, but I'd love to hear it again if she wouldn't mind repeating.
No, go ahead, Marion Crawford. Sure, about, I think it's about the staffing issue.
I think it's been years of work. I think
Rolling up the salaries.
So what happened was each year we budget health insurance premiums based on what we check in with our health insurance and underwriting folks. And we did budget the amount. And we budget not a significant increase, a small increase. We just found out in the last week that our health insurance is a reduction this year. The premium is a reduction. So when Amy and I were working on the budgets, there were 3 positions in particular that were presented by department heads that we had recommended that they be deferred until next year because we just couldn't find a way to include in the budget. So with the health insurance coming through, the 3 positions was the human service, human resource, and the part-time librarian. All those positions we had budget to start in January of the coming year, so it'll be January of 23. And so we did not fund those, we deferred them for the year. With the savings of the health insurance, it looks like we will be able to, and I'm recommending to the council that they allow us to fund the human service position, the human resources, and a part-time librarian. The human service position I see as a director that works with age groups from 0 to 105. And the seniors will be part of that department. Gloria will continue in her role, and all the seniors will continue in their roles under the director of that individual. And I see that department and that individual working very closely with a number of folks, the medical center, our school, our NAMI, our faith-based organizations, because I think it's really important that we start addressing some of the seniors, the mental health, the social economic issues that are confronting folks that live in our community. And that's what we're looking to do. And hopefully the council, as they go through the budget process and get through the public hearing and find the approval of the budget, we see that those positions are funded, and Amy and I will work when it will be best to get those positions filled and start those. So.
I guess I did hear right.
That's good news, isn't it?
It's wonderful news.
I know.
Don't have her
Absolutely.
repeat it again.
No, I won't, but it is wonderful news.
However,
And it blew everything I was gonna say, quite honestly, that I had prepared, because I don't have to say it now.
Gloria's,
Have to say it.
Gloria's presentation was kind of the same thing. Do we have Gloria Redlick on there yet?
I don't have a notification from her. I'm not sure of her phone number, so I don't know what I'm looking for.
Okay.
So what shows up on that is a phone number. Do we know Gloria's number? So if we can see if she's on
I
there.
have it in my cell phone. I can,
Amy,
Don't say it.
you know what, while we're waiting, maybe if you're good. So with that position, the budget, is there any addition for what the ask is and what the actual, is that number available yet? I don't think it is, but I'm just asking.
I'm sorry, is there a number available?
So, right now, as I look on page,
That is not included in the budget.
it's not included.
No,
in the budget.
and where it was budgeted originally was on one of the first pages, page number. Get this really, it's in the numbers, obviously, page.
I think it's
Page
8.
Maybe better than I did.
So organizationally, we had planned for this line item to be a wage line under other general administration.
I'm sorry, I thought that was Gloria. Okay, then I saw you.
Just voices in the room.
Voice in my head.
So while,
Go ahead, Amy.
while the
Amy Lane.
Director of Human Services would be working with the senior coordinator, the actual budget line item is not going to show up under the senior advisory line in the
Okay.
budget, if that's clear.
Right, no, I just wanted to make sure. So Sandra, if you'd like to go over that with us, go over your request and concerns, feel free. And we'll keep an eye out for Gloria.
okay, that'll be fine.
So unmute is *6, correct? It's *6. Gloria Redlick, if you can hear me, unmute, I believe, is *6.
So just to quickly, I tried to log on from all three numbers and it wouldn't let me do it. So she might be having the same issue.
She's in the meeting,
Right,
She's here.
I was in the meeting, but it didn't let me mute or unmute.
because I just read her.
Oh, yeah.
Keep going,
We don't
keep going, keep going.
I have Gloria on my phone. Speak with her. Gloria, what's the problem? Hello.
We need her through the Zoom so public can hear her. Wait, Millie, how do we handle, I mean, we have Sandra.
We're here, we're fine. We're fine. No, we're good.
That's fine.
No,
That's-
she just, we talked today and I was gonna do one part, she was gonna do another part.
And I'm trying to get
but
her in. I
I'll
know.
just, it's okay, I'll just,
Wait.
Well, you don't need to
No.
do all of it anyway, so.
well, I think she was basically gonna talk about the many programs. And you have that, you've had our budget since, I think, January.
You're always the first to send it in a very nice folder.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
At our expense too, we don't even charge the town for the folders. But we, just to go over some of our programs, probably one that's been very successful is our senior ride service. The one difficulty we haven't been able to do with that service is to have it in the summer because we don't have the availability of the cab drivers to run that service for us. We are hoping this summer, if we have the use of a town vehicle, to actually run a summer program, because of course, if there's any time during the year you don't want to be driving into town, it's certainly July and August. And our thought is to have at least 2 days a week in which our seniors can call and get a ride either into town, up to the medical center, visit a friend or whatever. So we're hoping that we have not been able to do that, mostly because of COVID for 2 years. We're hoping that this summer we might, and maybe there may be a cab driver that might be willing to help us with that. We're not quite sure. So that's one program that's been working very well. We had another program because we have members of the community that are willing to pay the tuition for 2 people to go to CCRI for the CNA training. And they are willing to pay the tuition for the 2 students and expenses for, I think there's an expense for your diploma and application, that kind of thing. And we were hoping to then kind of augment that with some funds to help them with their expenses. Because if they went to CCRI, they would be online courses, but there are, I think, 1 or 2 days a week. And because of the schedule, it would mean they have to stay over. So that involves a hotel room, meals, and transportation. And the hopes was to get a couple of people interested, maybe even some of our students, graduating students who decide maybe they want to go not to a 4-year program. And if they were to go through this, it's a 13-week program, which I think they've kind of stepped up because there's such a need for this service. And hopefully we train a couple of people and they would then work, at least agree to work on Block Island for at least 2 to 3 years. And they could work for themselves because very often when you have a CNA person working for an agency, most of the money goes to the agency. They could then be supervised or administered either by the medical center or now the director of human services. So, and our current director of human services is a registered nurse. So, that would be the way that they could be supervised, and because then they have to go through training every once in a while to renew their certification, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to succeed in getting anyone who would like to do that program. We're going to try again. We have advertised, we have put it on the bulletin board. So we're going to try that program again. If we can't do that, another program we'd like to do is to train for home companions. That's not so much a degree. It's usually 2 or 3 day kind of course, because a lot of our seniors, and you don't have to be seniors, for sometimes need some home just help at home, just simple. Someone is to be with them, maybe prepare a light meal, take them for a walk, that kind of thing. So that's another program that it's been kind of dear to our heart, and Gloria's worked very hard with that. So we are hoping to work on that.
Sandy, is that different from respite or the same thing? I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's a little different. Respite in some ways is where the person who needs the help, okay, someone is there to take care of them. Like there's adult daycare centers. So then the caregiver can receive respite. So that's something a little different. And we did a couple of years ago, tried that at the library, and I have to really plug the library because they've been wonderful to helping us out, especially to run some of the programs during the COVID times that we couldn't do anything in person. So the library has been, very, very, very helpful to us.
I say that, Sandy, because sometimes a caregiver needs the respite.
Well,
maybe
I said that wrong.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we did. We were hoping that people would go to the library, and then some of the staff and our committee were volunteer to be at the library to stay with that person, so the caregiver can get a couple of hours of their own free time. Mm-hmm. One thing for sure is if you're living in that situation, eventually it's the caregiver that kind of falls apart. It's pretty sad.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of cases just recently here, and we have a few on Block Island right now. And it's tough to watch families go through that. All right. So, and I think I've pretty much.
Thank you, Gloria.
Hello.
Do you want to finish? Do you want to finish before letting you in?
Um,
Why doesn't Sandra finish? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna pretty much wrap up my, my part here. So our budget was for, 47.7 and, we were granted 35. So we're a little short, but I'm so elated at the moment that, you know, we are finally gonna get a Department of Human Services. Oh, and there's one thing we want to do is we're going to do a pilot program to see if the community center can be so-called a senior center, which is something we certainly need. And when you talk about getting grants, a few years back, Gloria was able to get the community center known as a virtual senior center. And we're finally getting some grants from the state of Rhode Island, because when we inquired, the thing was, well, Block Island doesn't have a senior center and we only give grants unless that's the case. So I think it was through Blake Filippi's office, and they helped us. It was a few years ago now. I may get this, maybe I'm not correct on the facts, but one of those offices helped us to create a so-called virtual senior center. So I'll close with my remarks, and I'm on a very high at the moment. So
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra.
thank you.
Gloria, are you there?
Yes, hi. I am. Hello? You hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, I would add my gratification to hear so much concern about developing human services and strengthening human services on the island. As I've heard this evening, much of my presentation was devoted to urging our community to do that. I'm particularly pleased about the restoration of the Human Service Director's position and the library position as well. As usual, we at Senior Advisory come to you as our town leaders once more to speak on behalf of our senior constituency, having been charged by you, by the town, to advocate for the group that represents at minimum 1/3 of our population. We do continue to be the voice of seniors within that community. Our numbers, there have been many sort of resident counts, some local and some from agencies. The American Community Survey in 2019 estimated that there were 42% of us over 60 on the island. The local numbers out of the medical center, I believe, were that those over 65 numbered approximately, that was a year ago, 470 of a total of population count of 1,094, and that seemed to represent about 43%. In any event, we easily surpass the demographics of the state, which are that seniors represent 1/4 of the state's population, a ratio that one state spokesman called growing as baby boomers join them or us. You may have read a recent letter to the editor in the Block Island Times, in which we laid out our challenges that face island seniors and the role of SAC, Senior Advisory, in responding to them. You know, I think that our group was created in 2007 and works under, as I said, the charge of our community, of our town, to fulfill a powerful and necessary mission, and that is to sustain aging in place, seniors in their homes, their island homes, and in our community for as long as possible. And secondly, to improve the quality of life for them within our community. We do that through a number of focuses, and as Sandra mentioned several of them. Clearly, one is to try to match families with caregivers, and I think we've told you in the past we have a handful of wonderful caregivers that are local, but we have really reached a near crisis point in bringing this critical resource to all the seniors who need them. The numbers of people who have left the island to go into facilities, Sandra mentioned that we've lost people through a number of people who have passed away, who have died. But even before that, a number of long-term residents have had to leave the island because we were unable to provide services, adequate services to help them in the latter part of their lives. Our plan was, as Sandra also said, to try to create that CNA program for 1 or 2 candidates. And as she said, we'll continue to look. We have had not much success at that, no response, but we'll continue to look. And in other programs that we have created, we're very proud of the Senior Ride Service. You've heard us talk about that before, the SRS, because seniors continue to face challenges of isolation and loneliness, and a transportation service doesn't just allow them to get out of their homes, which is critical, by the way, but to make appointments, meet friends, run errands, and it's really critical in supporting their independence. To date, we funded this program largely through donations and some grant monies, as Sandra also mentioned. And while we're very appreciative of the generosity of individuals within our community, we strongly believe that the town should ultimately fund this vital service. The estimate that cost would amount to is something like $10,000 annually. And town funding, what town funding would do would be to assure that the SRS, the Senior Ride Service, would be consistently funded and run without the interruptions for lack of monies, which we've faced at different times during the last several years. We're unsure going forward about the receipt of a grant again, but we're hopeful for a state grant. And we don't know about contributions, individual contributions. And we anticipate and worry that the Senior Ride Service may be interrupted once again for lack of adequate funding. The cut in our budget request makes that a more likely scenario. To enhance quality of life, senior life, which is also part of our charge, we continue to offer all kinds of programs: educational, cultural, recreational, nutritional, and social. We sponsor weekly luncheons. And of course, during COVID, we've had to reconfigure those programs to what is an extraordinary undertaking by many volunteers and a special group at the Senior Advisory who deliver monthly to some 70 households. Other activities that we sponsor and have continued now mostly through virtual programming, our memoir writing, book groups, Tai Chi, seated strengthening exercise, and 2 support groups led by a local counselor, one for caregivers, the other for those living with loss. Most of those programs, many of them have been run collaboratively with the library, which, as Sandra mentioned, has been devotedly supportive of Senior Advisory goals. And this idea of creating a senior center is really fascinating and interesting because I just recently received information that there is currently a bill before the state legislature that would transform, quote, the state's Office of Healthy Aging into a department, making it far more visible and effective as an advocate for the state's growing senior population. So our renewed interest in beefing up senior support and human services is right in line with state efforts. Furthermore, that the idea of expanding that State Department, OHA, they talk of expanding its director's authority and appointing local senior centers as, this is fascinating to me, as hubs for service delivery with authority to bill Medicaid for transportation services. So you will see that the growth of a senior center actually could help us with the state facilitate perhaps more state funding and more state resources brought to the island. It would serve, help to work with us directly. Many of us have noted for a long time that the state, by attrition or whatever, has often forgotten the island 13 miles off the coast, with no malevolent intention, I don't think. What we see from the legislators on the state level is that they're revising and refining their priorities, much the way you are, much the way we're gratified that the town is, to expand rather than reduce human services that enhance senior life. In recognition of the growth of senior population across the country, there are also national movements in that direction. So it should reassure us that we are right in line with movements and research that indicates that attention to senior needs and human services and strengthening of human services is the way to go. We do continue to advocate for an adult care residence to serve perhaps 8 or 9 seniors or senior couples who can no longer manage within their households. We do acknowledge this is a long-term goal, but it is a project we believe that the town, perhaps in conjunction with private interests, perhaps creating a private foundation, that we all should begin to consider. This kind of residence would also provide housing for caregivers and or nurses, filling the serious housing shortages for some town employees that we know have existed for many years on the island. I had a statement now to say we were extremely distressed about the dropping of the Human Services Director, but I will reiterate that we are very relieved and very elated about that reinstatement. We've worked closely with the director, Marianne Seebeck, who from our point of view has made the post an invaluable resource for the island community. She has in effect, helped create an ad hoc department or agency and has been an indispensable resource to the senior advisory as well as to all the other age groups that she serves. We are grateful again that the town is rethinking and realigning and strengthening support for human services. Resources, for we know that resources and services promoting well-being and improving life quality must be available for all island residents, including senior citizens. Finally, we mentioned already that a number of our friends and neighbors have left the island either to go to facilities or have passed away. Serving elders and who comprise 1/3 of our population, I would just remind you, enriches all of us, our entire community. The time we have discovered, I think, together, that the time is to go beyond rhetoric and promising someday to attend to these matters, but rather today to resolve to make senior issues and human services financial priorities for the town. I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on behalf of our senior community. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Gloria, thank you so much. You were broken up a lot in that. Could you repeat that?
You really want me to? Did you not hear it?
No, we did. I'm kidding, but as you always presentation, and it's appreciated on behalf of our town. Does anybody?
Okay, good.
Does council have any questions for?
Quick question, and it could have a quick answer too. What's the bigger hurdle with the CNA proposal? Is it the 3-year commitment, or maybe because there's lack of housing, even if they go through?
Well, No, well, we have a donation that would take care of the tuition and would maybe help a little bit with housing off island. We would need funds to try. We thought we would try to underwrite the costs of lodging for that individual, for if it was a young person, particularly coming out of school, someone with limited means. And so we wanted to try to do that, but without the funding from the town, it doesn't seem likely. However, as Sandra pointed out, to date, we don't have any takers. We're hopeful, and we've contacted the school because and the principal, frankly, was quite interested in our proposal that this be an idea for some graduating senior who might not be interested or ready to go to college and have a one-year training program in a medical area where which they could use later as a springboard perhaps to another career. We thought it sounded reasonable, so did Christine Mange. So we want to continue to talk with her and see if there's anybody in the community also out there, reach out again. So there are, Sandra mentioned the program at CCRI, and they have enrollment, I think, in September, but also in January. I think there are 2 times that they have enrollment. So we're hopeful we could maybe get someone for the middle of the year, interested. And we'll just have to see if we can raise monies, and perhaps the town can help a little bit more in that area. I don't know if that answers your question, Mark.
Yeah, basically, it would really be one, interest, and 2, the time of year that the course was taken. Because in the winter, it was very difficult. We looked at a lot of the schedules, so that would be the 2 items.
Right. Okay, and then of course, we're still very concerned about the senior ride service, wanting to make it consistent rather than the periodic interruptions that we've had to close it down because of lack of funding. And that's why we believe it, whether the town eventually seeks to support it through us, through SAC, or through some transportation department, I don't know which is better, but the cost to us doesn't seem to be excessive in terms of town budget. I realize I'm not saying that because I realize every cent matters when calculating the budget. And we certainly don't want to stress the budget out, but any more than necessary. But we feel it's a very legitimate service and resource that should be made available to our seniors.
Thank you,
So,
Laura.
any other questions? Or okay, thank you again. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Council good?
Thank you.
Case good? All right.
If I just may add,
You
just
sh-
have one comment,
you
nothing to
have-
do with our budget.
You have you're at the
I'd
table.
like to address Millie, and I would like to thank Millie for all those years of clerking at the senior advisory, and answering the thousands of questions and keeping us away from, what is it, the rolling quorum that I kept calling you about? She's kept us out of trouble, but now you guys have her all to yourself, which I'm a little jealous, but we want to thank you very much. Okay.
Is that what it takes?
We're pretty good at cookies.
Pat, I know you're on, I know you. Can you wait on that? Because we wanna, are you a member of the senior advisory?
I'm a member of 2 other advisories, and I'm here to just mention, because 2 of them.
I know, but we're not taking comments. I just,
One sentence.
but then we gotta let everybody take the comments. You can send us an email if you want, but I'm trying to keep it in control, because if I let one do it, I'm gonna have to let everybody. We do support, I know we're on board with it all, but comments will be at the public hearing.
Thank you.
For the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Tri-County and, we have that next on the, Marion, we have that next on the, Will that be short or?
Yeah, that would be short.
We have NAMI, we have Tri-County, we don't have any documents for these, and then we have the school. I'm wondering if we want to,
Can I talk for Tri-County?
yeah, because we have them on the.
Okay, I do want to thank you for supporting them with $1,000 because they do give us social worker assistance, which we don't have our own social worker, tax relief and fuel adjustment and help, okay? So it's well worth $1,000.
Thank you.
Okay.
I agree.
Where am I? No, this page is open. We have NAMI, Tri-County Action. Do you want to speak to any of those yet, or we can go to the visitor
He
center?
provided you folks with documentation this afternoon, and they are requesting the same $1,000 that they requested in previous years. And just so you know, for informational purposes, they provided food, number of services. They provided commodities for the food bank goods of 35, heating assistance 6, senior health insurance program 16, for a total of 57 services is what they have.
And that's all funded.
Yes, those are the services they provide.
Do we have anything on, I'm just trying to get the easy things out before we go to the visitor center, Coast Guard facility?
The funding in the Coast Guard facility, just to remind the council, that's for the electricity, utilities and things of that whole facility down at the Coast Guard.
Yep.
Facility, whatever you want to call it. So it's the big house, the motor pool, the garage, all that area. So that's what that is for.
Okay, visitor center.
I'm interested from the visitor center.
NAMI? I'm sorry, thought you were.
It's okay. I'm the vice president of NAMI, and we just, we're happy that we're still included in the budget. We want to thank you for the funds that we've received in the past. And we did not ask for money this year, but I just want to be clear, it doesn't mean we're not doing programs. It doesn't mean we're not doing education or advocacy.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
What's NAMI?
National Alliance on.
It's the second to bottom line, it's zero.
Third from the bottom line, it's number
Page 19.
5881.
Page 19.
No.
They didn't request and we didn't
That's
fund.
I'm speaking to the fact that we didn't request money, but it doesn't mean we're not doing work. So we are still here. We advocate, educate. And the last thing the board wanted me to express tonight was we also support the development of human services, and we're really proud that that's the direction the town is going in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Where's Lars? There he is. Don't let that scare you away.
We continue to run a vibrant, important visitor center for the town. As you know, we're often the first stop off the boat. And we see hundreds and hundreds of people every day, not every day, but throughout the week. And we pass out materials for people. We answer questions. And it's a good little, wonderful little service to provide the town. And I have any questions you may have?
Good.
Partly a question and partly a statement, but I know it's fully funded, or your request is met. And I think we're all in pretty good shape on that one. And I'm trusting that funding from other sources will also come through and we don't have to do the panning anymore.
Yes, and we're also really focused this year on improving our finances. We're coming out of a rough patch, and that's a huge focus of ours this year.
Thank you.
To get us to be a really solidly financially secure institution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just glad we're at a point where we're not arguing about this for months on end. You're funded this year.
Yes, thank you.
And this is the conversation we're gonna have with it. And we know, I think we all know what good the chamber does down there for the whole community. I think $10,000 is money well spent down there. So I support your request. I guess I don't have to because it's in the budget already. So thank you. Is there any questions for Lars?
I appreciate that very much.
He never gets me far. Put him on the hot seat.
Just a comment. You said it's a little service. It's anything but. It's a huge service if anyone spends some time there.
Well, it's a big service out of a little building. I think I was talking about the size of the building, but we're actually going to try to expand. We can't do anything physically to the building, but physically expand the space that people get information from inside that, because as you well know, there's a tiny little portion of the building that's the public space and the rest of it is the office space. And we're trying to improve on that to increase our level of service.
There's no more questions for Lars. You're all set.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Block Island School. I see there's a lot of you here tonight. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. If you need more seats, we can get you those up at the table. Come on, Annie. Don't be afraid. Gerard?
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming and welcome to Block Island. I don't think this is your first time before us with the budget.
For the budget, well, we had one meeting that I was able to.
One
attend.
meeting,
Yeah,
But not the budget.
but not for the budget.
So welcome again to the community and I hope everything's going well there for you.
It is. It's a wonderful community, greater community and school community. I'm very blessed to be there.
All right, thanks.
And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the Block Island school budget tonight. At this time, the Block Island school budget still contains projections for financial variabilities that have yet to be determined. And we spoke about that last time. In fact, last time, the biggest issue was that we talked about the state aid being projected to dramatically decrease because of the funding formula. Thank goodness, the good news is the governor's budget actually provides an increased amount of state aid for the Block Island schools. So that's behind us, that big worry that we shared with you. But the governor's budget still needs to be approved by the General Assembly. So it's still a variable within our budget. You just never know. We currently are in negotiations with the NSTA and AFSCME, those bargaining units. And so until we have the CBAs finally done, there'll be financial variabilities in that as well. And lastly, we have 7 retirees, and until we hire the replacements, we won't know for sure. We always budget a certain number, but sometimes it comes in a little higher or a little lower, depending on who you hire and what kind of experience they bring with them. So those are the variables. I am happy to report, and actually, Mary Ann stole my thunder because she reported it, that we did get good news. The one variable that was in our budget about health and dental came in extremely low. And so that really helped us out. The initial Block Island budget request was submitted to the town with a 4% increase. But now that we have the finalized dental rates, that actually has been reduced down to a 3.1% increase. So the request has now come down because of that to $5,435,619. In the town's budget that we're working off of tonight, the Block Island School is budgeted at $5,372,797, which is a 1.9% increase. So for us, the difference between 3.1 and 1.9 currently leaves the Block Island School budget with a shortfall of $62,822. This year, we actually provided a budget book and our traditional line item document so that we could use that to discuss what's going on. And the budget book was designed to increase transparency on the school department's budget process, on the school department's stewardship of the school funds, highlighting the fund balance, the special revenue funds, and the general fund revenues and expenses. Lastly, the budget book identifies specific actions taken to balance the budget. So if everybody could actually look on the last page, you'll see a 3-step process and a chart. And so the 3-step process is what the school committee did over quite a few meetings to try and reduce the request. The initial request of the school committee was a 9.2% increase. They brought it all the way down to 4%. And you can see in the chart different meetings where there were different recommendations from the superintendent and final recommendations from the school committee to get that down to a 4%. My concern, and you'll see it in the chart, is the reliance of the use of fund balance to address administrative and staff requests. And my understanding is that this has gone on for 2 years now, that we used quite a bit of money last year from the fund balance to address some of these requests. So, you know, I always believe a prudent steward of government funds maintains a healthy fund balance for unanticipated expenses. I don't want to keep winnowing away at that, right? But that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. So, you know, before Melanie and I do our best to answer any questions that you have based on this budget book or on the line item, I do want to thank all of you in advance for your consideration of our operating budget and for your support of the town's capital budget, because the school department's going to greatly benefit from that too. And we realize that. And I just want to make sure you know how much we appreciate that. So, you know, if we have any more questions, if you want to dig in, Melanie and I will do our best to answer those questions. And of course, I'm so lucky to have the school committee support us tonight as well.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, all of you. Council, questions, comments, school yet? You want to go through the budget? You want to go through the whole thing, or is that necessary?
I have questions.
If you want to
hit them.
I just had a broad question, it wasn't that specific. It was about the fund balance. So you're still using the fund balance?
So
I
if you,
didn't understand that.
yeah, I'm sorry. The,
Where are, I didn't know where we are on this.
yeah,
The last page?
on the last page, if you look in the last column of that chart, under certain items, we reduce them from the budget request and we put in parentheses, use fund balance.
Right.
So, you know, we had a plan to replace the phone system and we did some of it last year. And we're going to do some of it next year.
Okay, so you didn't actually take them out, you're using the.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. They were all requests that came in or multi-year requests.
So you digging yourself a deeper hole.
Luckily, you know, it's not deep. You know, like I said, we don't want to get to that point, but you know, you don't want to create a trend either of using those funds.
What is the existing fund balance?
That would be on, I think it's the second page.
Page one.
Page one. So you can look at page one.
And 19.
Martha, can I answer your question?
Yeah,
as
sure.
well? I just asked Melanie to do a little research on this today. I was trying to remember back the last few years, what the school requested and what we were granted. And so we had been level funded about 5 years ago and 4 years ago, and starting in 2021, we were not granted as we were underfunded. I'm gonna call it that.
Underfunded from the request.
From the request.
From the previous year.
From the request. So in other words, we requested 4%, we always try to come in around 4%, and we were granted 2.9. And so it was the difference of about $60,000-$70,000 each year for the last 2 years, and then this year will be the third year. As opposed to taking things out of the budget, we thought, you know, security system or whatever it was is really important. We just use our fund balance. We've used that for the last 2 years, and it has come down a little bit each year.
But you do have a facade.
We do have a facade. We don't have to talk about that. Isn't that nice? Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Andre, can I build on that a little bit?
The facade?
No.
It's already done.
No.
No, okay, go ahead.
Can somebody help me with that fund balance, just roughly the last few years? Has it been in that $320,000 range roughly? Or was it a much higher number? I'm just trying to get an idea of to further the point.
So our fund balance this year is 455,480. I think it has been around that range the past years.
So it is dropping down to 319. Is that right?
At the bottom of the chart.
Available
That's-
fund balance
there's a
is
little
318?
difference. It's not that much.
Well, that's because we set aside 3.5% of our operating budget.
Right,
for
that's what I'm
emergency.
trying to
So
get
we
to.
don't include that in what's available to spend.
So it's been pretty flat.
We've mostly added to it each year.
Yep. If I can just keep going for a minute, just a couple of numbers popped out at me. And by the way, the book is great. So thank you very much for all the work that went into it. I can only imagine. And I don't want to use any names. So since the line item says superintendent's office at a 13% increase. So that's not a personal comment. It's a question of just numbers.
Yeah.
Could somebody help me how that arrives?
I'll let Melanie explain it.
In the past, our superintendent has always been a retiree, so they were not eligible for retirement benefits. But now that our new superintendent is not a retiree, we are required by law to contribute to the employee retirement system of Rhode Island. And also in the superintendent's office is our legal line, which we did increase this year.
Okay.
Millie's asking.
Oh,
I just asked to use the microphone.
Oh, geez.
Melanie, although I want to hear you, those are the things.
so you just pass the mic down. And could you help me a little bit with the central office number, again, a 44% increase. And my understanding is, especially as I think we have at least one, the principal retiring and a few other folks retiring and shifts, help me with that number.
So in central office is where we budgeted all the severance payments for retirees that are eligible. So we do have 5 retirees that are eligible for severance payments, and that totals $76,500. Also in central office is our expense for retirement healthcare, and that is $23,782. And we have 2 people next year that will be eligible for post-employment benefits, and that's the retiree healthcare.
And is that what brings that number up to 109?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Yep.
If I can, sorry to keep going, and I hope you don't mind. Just going up a little bit on that same page, which looking at the anticipated federal funds expenditure, can you help me with the line early childhood staff? And we just heard from the Early Learning Center. What is that line, or what is that position?
The ESY staff.
It's a 1,500, so it's not a big number, it was just more of.
So that is our early childhood coordinator and our early childhood screener. So students that are coming up from the preschool, they're all screened to, determine their needs.
Right, so it's a needs assessment type of thing, okay, that's helpful. I was on the technology side, I don't know what page it's on, page 6. I was surprised a little bit, given the growth in online classes, or at least my perception of the growth of online classes, maybe I'm wrong, that we're really only dealing with like a $4,000 increase in virtuals or network management. Am I reading this wrong, or has there been a tremendous growth in online and I'm misapplying? So.
Which one? Network
Well,
management?
it's sort of both, they seem to tie into each other, I thought.
So I think, I believe that. Sorry. And Melanie, you can help me with this, but I believe that the online classes are in a different line item than this chart. Is that correct? Or is it in here?
They're in this chart.
It says
No,
virtual classroom.
they're not in the budget book chart.
Oh,
So
they're in
that
the other-
technology is more of the work that we do with North Kingston.
No.
Do you have a line item on this one?
So I was on page 6, but I think they're about to bring us to page 3
or 5.
Looking at page 5, are you looking at this in the budget book?
I
Our
would-
budget book, or are you looking at the line item?
I was actually looking at page 6.
Page 6.
Which is a chart of technology budget. I think it's, oh, I'm sorry, okay, it's on my screen, sorry, I
So you're
apologize.
looking at the virtual classrooms.
Yes, and network management, those just 2 numbers
I associated with online virtual learning. And
Oh,
I
yes.
was,
Yeah.
I was surprised, I guess not surprised. I'm asking as to whether that number is that, I just want to make sure that I understand what that number represents, because I would have thought it was higher in an increase.
So those are, I believe, online courses that we purchase through different vendors, depending on the needs of students. And sometimes there's a need that a student is missing a requirement for graduation. So there's one vendor that we use that really does a good job with that. Sometimes we use those courses for those electives that we just don't have enough teacher variety, being a small school district. You know, when you have one science teacher, it's really hard to provide the variety of courses, although our science teacher is awesome. The variety of courses, and that's what the online learning is. But we did increase it because we've seen that there's a need for that, to provide a variety of courses.
Thank you. And I guess in closing, first of all, as I said, the budget book really helps. Secondly, I'm impressed and thank the board and all of you for whittling down the request and figuring out ways to cover some expenses. It's still, in my mind, sort of a big number. And as we've heard for tonight, $30,000 matters. And I guess I understand the request. I also understand the reduction in some of the costs. We'll see where all of the sessions go. I guess I'm just a little nervous that this is still higher than I'd love to see it. And this is my own personal comment, but I wanted to sort of say that up front. And I really appreciate you answering, because that helped me understand, but I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. And it is fluid because you don't know how much all these new teachers are going to cost. When you hire a new principal, do you think you're going to still stick with the same model of 2 principals?
That's the school committee consideration. That's not my consideration. That's there for them to decide. And I think they're gonna, I don't know, I speak for you.
Smart guy.
Mic drop.
I understand that the perception is that we have a 2 principal model right now. We do have a full-time principal. We also, our other employee is student services, which is a special ed head combined with a school administrator. So if you remember, we used to have a part-time principal and full-time principal and a part-time principal.
Right.
And so the short answer is we don't know right now. But our we have a plan, but we're right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And so we're also in the middle of negotiations.
Attend the meetings, right?
Yeah, well, we're right, literally, we met from 2:00 yesterday till 10:00 last night. We're in the thick of it right now. So we'll have a opportunity to speak on it probably at our next meeting.
Okay.
And we'll of course keep you apprised of the situation. We are, I will say the school committee is highly respectful, I will say, of our budget and what we came in asking for and what we are anticipating receiving. And we're well aware of the numbers and how they're going to work. And we have, we know.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's a big number in my mind too, Sven, but we have a lot of precious resources on this island that attend that school, so.
Yeah.
Just have one.
Keith,
I just have one quick question. So you talked about $23,000 for the health benefits of retiring teachers. Is that not sort of reserved when you're making the retirement contributions, or should we expect that to be a recurring thing with so many retirees? I just don't, really just asking sort of how that operates.
So if a teacher has a certain number of years of service when they retire, And they're eligible for the benefits either 5 years or until age 65, whichever comes first. It's called OPEB, Other Post-Employment Benefits, and we did start an OPEB trust. So if you look at page 1 of this one here, the line item for the expense is 52122. So you'll see that 26,168 there, but also under the revenues, there is a fund transfer in for that same amount. So we are funding it out of the trust.
So that's a number that will recur until the eligible retiring teacher reach age 60.
Yes.
Roughly for that.
We are not offering the benefit to new teachers. That was changed in the contract, and not everyone will qualify because some people will be 65 or older when they retire, or they haven't been there enough years. So it's not everyone.
Thanks.
Yep.
You do have a very good, used to have a very good science teacher. There isn't about 3 weeks that goes by without my son saying how he enjoyed Sue Gibbons.
Yeah.
And he's in second year of college now, so he's still thinking about Sue Gibbons.
Yeah, oftentimes it's right, her classroom is right adjacent to our offices, and I'll see her going by with some unique experiment that she's working on or just finished, and she has to, she'll walk by, oh yeah, we just burnt these things to see how they go up in flames. I don't know.
Yep.
It's always interesting to see her class.
The boys always love blowing things up. That hasn't changed. Council?
Thank you.
Anything else?
I would add a wonderful thing about this community is that really it is one pie, that we understand that and we actually collaborate a lot. So, I want to kudos to NAMI Block Island. They just funded some professional development that our school would really need. So I want to thank them as well and let you know that they're doing good work across agencies, which is really nice. And one of the things that we started was an athletic committee so that we could work closer with the rec department. And so one of our things on our budget is increasing the number of portable basketball backboards so that we could split up the gym differently and get more use out of it. So just to let you know that there's a lot of collaborative work going across all of your departments.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think with COVID, everything's shutting down, and I think coming back into it, appreciate that, innovation there with trying to get more people out.
Yeah.
I think people are just dying to go out. So much appreciated. And I think, you have a good team, you have a good staff. So thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. And I look forward to more adjustments, I guess, when we have the final budget. We'll get those. Thank you.
Good luck with this building.
Is there anything?
That's everything.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded by Sven. All those in favor, Keith?
Yes.
Martha? I'm in favor, Mark and Sven. Motion always carries 5-0. I don't know why I call the roll.